G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. And as you may have seen earlier today, I released a part 2 of my trades videos. This is a similar video talking about trades, but instead in this one I'll be going through which player each, or what a player they should be looking at for each team in this trade period, which team should be basically looking at a player that would suit them the best. Starting off in alphabetical order, going from Adelaide all the way to the Western Bulldogs. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll get straight into it. First is Adelaide, obviously, and they've got a bit of an issue with their key defence at the moment. Obviously, Duday could be, gone by the end of the year. Even if he does re-sign, he's out for first half of the year anyway with an ACL, and Murray's out for the whole year with an ACL. So that's their two best defenders basically out. They don't really have too many other options. They are targeting Chris Burgess in the trade period, who is a key defender forward, a bit of a utility. He'd obviously be used as a defender for their defence. They've got a few other younger defenders. They're not all that great, though. They definitely need a key defender. And for me, I think they should target Dougal Howard as their number one priority. I do believe he is South Australian. Originally played for Port Adelaide, then went to St Kilda, then went to Adelaide. So it would make it interesting to see if Port Adelaide still hated him when he comes up in derbies. Obviously, if he goes there. I do believe Adelaide are a little bit interested in him, but I do believe that it's Sydney that is the most interested in Dougal Howard. He does want a bit of a refresh start now. He hasn't really fallen out of favour at the Saints, but did get injured, and it's a really hard defence to crack into at times, and it's just such a superb defence at the Saints that he may need a bit of a restart, and I reckon Adelaide is the perfect home for him. Moving on to Brisbane, they've got such a strong list that it's going to be very, very difficult to do. They probably need some defenders, maybe for depth at most. But because Darcy Fort could be leaving, they do need a backup ruckman. And I've got someone who they're actually targeting pretty hard in this draft. And with Joe Daniher coming close to the end of retirement, they do need a key forward type ruck. And I personally think Mabior Chol is the perfect player for Brisbane. Maybe not necessarily next year or even the year after, but once Joe Daniher's gone, he will be 100% in this side. It will be interesting as well in Q clashes. It would make it pretty interesting. I don't think he's too keen on leaving Queensland now that he's set base, and he's just recently moved to the Gold Coast Suns, but I do believe he's getting interested in Adelaide, and he could be opt to move there, but I do see Brisbane as his most likely home, and I do even see him playing in that forward line. That's probably Gunston. He's either going to go for one more year or he will retire, so he will probably get a good look in that forward line eventually. Eric Hipwood, to be honest, he's a bit of a fringy player in my opinion, but Brisbane rate him very, very highly. That ACL has definitely ruined his career though, or at the moment, and he could even get ahead of him if he, puts in the hard work and dedication. I have been told he's done decently in the VFL, but just not enough to get in front of Ben King and Casbolt and other forwards like Lukosius at the Gold Coast Suns. Now for Carlton, an interesting one. They've been playing so well recently that they don't really need too much. People have linked maybe a half-forward type player because, that's their fringiest spot at the moment, especially with they're not actually 100% certain at the moment who they're going to go with. Obviously, for their prelim final, it's obviously in a couple of days. So they've got like Motlop and Cunningham and a few players to select from there, so maybe they do need a player there. Someone like a Jade Gresham would be the most obvious player for Carlton, but for me, I'm actually not going to say Jade Gresham, and I'm going to say they might need another key defensive option as a bit of a backup. Maybe like a bit of a backup like situation just in case Wiedering or Kemp or McGovern goes down next year. They've got to have someone that's, a backup option. And there's a few key defenders out there at the moment. Obviously, a few being missed out on. Ben Mackay's let's face it, he's not coming to Carlton. There's a few other options out there. Players that they can target if they really want to, but they can target even more than one player if they wanted to for their key defence, but they do need a key defender. And I've linked Denver Granger-Barras. He needs a restart. Let's face it. He's got to go to another team this season, and I don't know who it's going to be. He's definitely been rumoured to go to West Coast at this rate, or at this stage, but I think Carlton should try and jump on board with him. He's a swingman as well, so he can play anywhere in the ground, which means he can play forward if they really need to, or forward line isn't working with Mackay and Curnow, or they could just chuck him back into defence. But it would be hard to break into that team, so yeah, it was kind of a hard one to pick for Carlton, but I've tried my best. For Collingwood, again, pretty difficult. I guess our only really fringy spot is our rucks, but I've actually put Ben King as our target, and obviously won't be this year, which is a bit unfortunate, but let's still try and push Ben King out of Gold Coast 1 year early. Try and convince him. St Kilda are obviously highly interested in him as well because his brother plays there, and I think Ben King is pretty interested in going to those two teams, and I think he wants a big restart as well away from Gold Coast. He actually did pretty well this year, seeming he was coming back from an ACL, a pretty bad one as well. He was out for more than 12 months. I think it was 13 months he ended up being out for. So, it's a pretty severe and pretty remarkable that he's come back and done what he's done after a 13-month injury in his first year back. So, yeah, I'm really, really keen for him to come to Collingwood. He's obviously going to be our biggest trade target in the next couple of years, and I really, really want him to come. But he will be not easy to get out of Gold Coast, and we're going to give up probably all our draft picks to get him, and most of our future draft picks as well. And there's a lot of future Collingwood players that will be coming up next year that would be interesting for us to select, and we have got really good hands on selecting them for our academy as well. They all play for Oakleigh Chargers, so it's going to be hard to get him, but I really want Ben King to come, and he would suit our forward line as well, which isn't yet 100%, locked, with maybe playing free tools, McStay, King and Myercheck. I don't know. It'd just be so cool to see Ben King in Collingwood colours, that's for sure. He'd be the king of the pies, that's for sure. For Essendon, many could say key forwards, key defenders. There's so many players that they should be targeting. Obviously, they're mainly after Ben Mackay, which is a pretty good damn obvious one. I think they've got good links with Todd Goldstein, which will improve them, you would feel. But I've just gone basic. You've got to use Ben Mackay somewhere, so I feel like Essendon should be targeting Ben Mackay the most this season. They definitely need a key defender more than anything. Let's face it, Laverde and Ridley aren't going to save the Bombers' defence. They're just not good enough. Get Ben Mackay in, then play all three. It would just be so much easier and so much better for the Bombers. Pretty quick one. Moving on to Fremantle. They're in need of a big-bodied midfielder. Let's just say it. Whenever they won the contested possessions, Fremantle, it gave them a good chance of winning this season. They also need a guy that can come in and that starts well. They just really need to start well, the Dockers. So they've got to find maybe a big-bodied midfielder in there. They haven't really targeted anyone specifically, really, this draft period, which is obviously, in my opinion, which will probably make them a worse side. But they've got to just find a way to get a big-bodied mid to the club. And I've just gone Bailey Smith. It's probably less than a 1% chance that he does go to Fremantle. In fact, it's probably less than that, but just try and get someone similar to Bailey Smith. It's so hard to find a player so similar to Bailey Smith, but just offer him millions of money and just see what you can do, but it's just not going to happen. So moving on to Geelong. Again, I could probably say Bailey Smith. They are in need of a midfielder, but in my opinion, I think they need a ruck more. And I've set Brodie Grundy as their main trade target. As much as I'd hate it to happen, my favourite player really in the game, he was my favourite player. He's not anymore because he left. But, If he goes for Geelong, I'll have to hate him, and it would just be the worst case scenario for me and probably the best for him because Geelong don't have a ruckman. Blicavs is not a ruckman. If you're a Geelong fan shouting at the TV right now, we've got Blicavs, we've got Stanley, they're not ruckman. And you're not bloody Blaine Conway again. He was shocking against English in the final round of this season, and they need a ruckman desperately, Geelong. And Grundy is obviously going to be their main target. For Gold Coast, Dimmer, it's simple. A big-bodied midfielder. They missed out on Matt Crouch. He signed a contract, so it can't be him. They do need an explosive forward as well, and I think they've found him in Sam Flanders, who is still being, there's still rumours about him even leaving the club, even though he signed a 4-year contract. I'm not sure if they're true or not, but I do think he's going to stay. They need a big-bodied midfielder, whether he's decently rated or not, or something like that. They've just got to find a way to get a big-bodied mid, and Dion Prestia has to be their main target. Try and lure him out. Even Dustin Martin, doesn't matter. I'll put them both in. Just get one of them. It doesn't matter. Get one. If they've done that, then I reckon they could be a really good side next year, Gold Coast. GWS is next, and they've got a very, very completed side, and they do need a backup ruckman. We've seen come out today, after I've released this trade video, that they're after Elliot Himmelberg, they're after Brian Teakle, who's been delisted by Port Adelaide now, as a player to, come in and play a supporting ruck forward role to Briggs. And let's face it, Lockie Keefe, while he's actually done somewhat decently at the role, he's still not the main man. And he's so old as well. He's so slow. A sluggish player. But, he's working for them in a way. They do need that player. And someone that I've linked to them, who they were interested in last year, and I think they still are, is Ivan Soldo. Because he can play forward. We've seen it. He's played a bit forward this year at Richmond. Go after Ivan Soldo. He's a good ruckman. Probably one of the best ruckmen on this ruck merry-go-round, or ruck Ferris wheel this trade period, and can play forward. Better than Brian Teakle. Not necessarily better than Elliot Himmelberg. He'd still be a pretty good option, and especially to link up with his brother. I still think they should go after Himmelberg and Soldo perhaps, but Soldo is definitely the man for them, I reckon. Hawthorn, pretty simple. It's Ben Mackay. I'm using him twice. I know I shouldn't really be doing that, but it's Ben Mackay. It has to be. They've missed out on Radicalia. It has to be Ben Mackay. He'd slot in so well. Sam Mitchell, let's just face it, he's doing something scary at the Hawks. He's rebuilding them aggressively, but superbly. And Ben Mackay would be perfect for them. 26 years of age. It just fits them so well. He's not really, I guess he will be in his prime in a couple of years, but he's not really in his prime yet, which is a scary thing. He's still such a great interceptor. But he's been the most talked about player in this trade period, which is a bit odd because he's not that good. But he's still going to be amazing for Hawthorn, let's face it. He's going to be unreal. Melbourne, they desperately need to keep forward. Doesn't matter, do they need more midfield or do they need a ruck forward type player? Yes, they do, to support Maxi now, because Luke Jackson played that role really, really well. Brodie Grundy didn't. Sent him to work on his forward craft, and yeah, well, that didn't work very well, did it? A ruck forward, there's a few of them going around, not necessarily that highly rated, obviously, but there still has to be at least one, right, that's going around. And I do feel that there kind of isn't one for Melbourne. They've obviously already got it. Shane McAdam, who's a fantastic player, don't get me wrong, but I think now that I don't really want to see him because apparently he's been rumoured to Collingwood and he's an absolute goat in my opinion. That's Buku Khamis. Surely go after Buku. He's a great forward / defender. He can go anywhere really. He can play in the ruck. We've seen it in his game this year. He's great. He's athletic. He can jump high. He can play back up to Maxi and play in that that centre half forward role. So just get Buku. It's that simple. Won't cost too much as well, which is superb. North Melbourne, they've also been linked to Buku. Obviously they're in a bit more trouble and do need someone that isn't Buku. And I've actually got someone who they probably will get in this trade period here as mine. And it might come as an interesting one, seeming of how interesting his season was. And that's Andrew Gaff. I personally think a change of club, change of personality, I'm not change of personality, but change of like playing group, change of coach could really, really suit Andrew Gaff. You know, his headspace hasn't been amazing ever since what happened in 2018, and he's never really been that good since, well, the last couple of years, and he hasn't really been able to find that 2020 to 2021 form again. Even in 2021, he wasn't even that good, so I'd still think he can go to North and show some experience. It was like Liam Shields. No one was expecting him to be good. He was obviously a bit injury prone in his 2022 season, but he came to North Melbourne and just did superbly, in my opinion, in his 2023 season. Was one of their best players, and I feel like Andrew Gaff could have the same impact. So get him to the club, North Melbourne. You need some experience, and you need players that will try. I know Andrew Gaff isn't exactly trying at the moment, but maybe a change of club might suit him. A club that's hopefully on the rise. Port Adelaide, they're in desperate need of key defenders, and they've got them already. Zerk Thatcher, Radagalier. Desperate need of a ruckman. Jordan Sweet, he's a fringe ruckman. He's a bit better than a fringe ruckman in my opinion, but how can we tell? Because he's been playing VFL all year stuck behind Tim English. We just don't know if he's going to be good enough, and you got to have a backup option. They're interested in other ruckman. They will get another ruckman probably. They will probably delist or trade Sam Hayes away as well, so... And they've already delisted Teakle, who's going to get picked up by another club. They've got Vesentini, and Lysette's either going to retire or go to Collingwood by the sounds of things. So they kind of need that backup ruck option who can play forward, that can, mark the ball, do well, stuff like that. I guess you could almost say Radagalier could have been a good one, but no, they're key defence. They need him as a key defender. So the ruckman, ruck forward, I guess, that I've got set to go to Port Adelaide, or I think would be a very good option for Port Adelaide, at least, is Tom Fullerton. No one knows about this kid. He's actually really highly rated. He's a good forward. He's more of a forward than a ruckman, I know, but at least give some support to Jordan Sweet. What if it's a really difficult year for him? And you got to have some support for him, and even if Sweet doesn't do well, you've got Vesentini who needs to develop and looks like he could be a good player, but he's just so raw at the moment. So Fullerton for me. He's only been linked to Richmond, and he's probably going to go to Richmond. Port Adelaide aren't interested in him, by my understandings, but I guess it's a good player. Now Richmond, they need a key forward. There's so many options. They're linked to so many different fringy Gold Coast players, even their draft picks, key forwards. That's really it, though. Their defence is strong enough. They obviously got to try and keep Dusty, obviously, but in my opinion, I think it's a bit of a vice versa. Port Adelaide are going after Fort, and Richmond are going after Fullerton, but I think Port Adelaide should go after Fullerton, and I think Richmond should go after Fort. Why? Is because Fort is actually a quality ruck forward, in my opinion. Better than most others. I think they should be going after Darcy Fort. Give him some good game time. He can be like the backup ruck to Nankervis and play more forward with Lynch to help him out. So I think Ford is the best option for Richmond. Fringy players I'm selecting for most clubs here, but they're just players that would just improve teams, in my opinion. Teams that need them. Now, St Kilda, they need a key forward. They need a big-bodied mid. They've got their wingman in Henry, I think. 75% chance, I think. 25% chance Hawthorn still, apparently. But I think he's preferred side of St Kilda. But anyways, I do think they need a midfielder. A big explosive midfielder. Who's probably the best one? Probably Bailey Smith. So, again, I've linked him to another club that's probably not going to happen in St Kilda. He's been linked to Geelong and Hawthorn, Bailey Smith, not Fremantle and St Kilda, who I am recommending him try and go to. I don't know, because he just fit in so well in a side like a Fremantle or a Geelong, yes, but St Kilda as well, in my opinion. He completely changed their game, their club, probably their fans. It'd just be a huge ad. Sydney, they need a key defender. They haven't actually locked targets on any of them. They're not after Ben Mackay anymore. They've signed Malikan, but he's not good enough. They need a better one to help out Tom McCartan. One like Barris, who they're still technically into him, I think, but most likely not going to happen. So the best one that I've already used earlier, but oh well, is Dougal Howard, and one that they can probably get. Just get Dougal Howard. It's that simple. He needs a refresh start, and I reckon he'd actually be really good at Sydney. So yeah, Dougal Howard. West Coast. They're in a bit of a difficult situation where they need players everywhere. And they've already got Brockman, which is a good ad. A very good ad, in my opinion. Apparently, Liam Ryan is rumoured to be involved in a trade going to Hawthorn with Brockman, which I'm absolutely going crazy about because I've only found this out a few hours, just about an hour ago, really, a few hours after I made this trade video. And that would be crazy loss for him, for the West Coast. So Brockman comes straight in to replace Ryan, but all of a sudden, he only comes in to replace him. They're not adding anything. They need to add players. In my opinion, I think Bailey Williams is good enough in the ruck for now to stay there. Obviously, they're after Matt Flynn. Probably get him. Cool. Add Matt Flynn. They just need players everywhere. They're linked to so many different players that exactly aren't so good. But they're still linked to some pretty good players. You know, I think Sharp would be a nice option for them on the wing that they're linked to. Best player, probably Devon Robertson. Robertson, sorry. I always say Robertson. He has been offered a 4-year deal by West Coast, a 2 at Brisbane, a lot more money at West Coast, still wants to play out this year, obviously, at Brisbane first, and he's in the side at the moment, and if he wins a grand final there, Brisbane will obviously probably keep him and, you know, they'll want him to stay, so I think they should offer him a bigger deal with more money, West Coast. Lure him out. He's a high-quality player, and he could be staying at Brisbane even more now that, you know, his shirt was taken off and, you know, he's become famous on his social media platforms now. So, he might be staying at Brisbane, but offer him perhaps one more year, 5 years, and ramp up the money. We saw Isaac Rankin. That's all that needed Isaac Rankin to leave Gold Coast when he was famous there. Now look what he's done. He's become the next Eddie Betts. Could this guy... I'm almost saying it. Could this guy become like the next Luke Shuey of West Coast? He could, in my opinion. Western Bulldogs. Interesting one. The final team on this list, they don't need ruckmans, but they do kind of need a backup ruckman. Apparently they are after Teakle, which would be a pretty good ad for them. He's a ruck forward. It'd be nice. Rory Lobb, we saw him go into the ruck in the final game and actually have an impact, so there you go. Don't know why that move wasn't made even in round 1. It took him bloody 24 rounds to bloody realise that, what if we throw Rory Lobb in the ruck? My goodness. Anyways, give English a bit of a rest up forward. It just changed the game for the Bulldogs. Won them that game, and they should have done it a bit earlier. So I do think they're alright in that status. They probably do need another big key defender. I've used Dougal Howard quite a bit. Ben Mackay. I don't think they're after too many key defenders, though. They're after James Jordan, and I don't know if they're the leading runner for him. I've recently found out that... Unfortunately, I found out after I made my trade video, which was a bit disappointing. Can't really change it now, though, can I? And, I think they should go after Jordan, in my opinion. He's just such a good player. Got a bit of grand final experience. Be similar to move to like the Baker move to Bulldogs. He's just been starved of opportunity, just playing as stub. So I think they should put him in. Try and go after him. Bit of a harder one, the Western Bulldogs. They've obviously got to have their number one option is keeping Bailey Smith. His manager's come out and said that he's going to stay, but I don't know if that's true or not. Bailey Smith is the number one priority for them, not getting other players. Tim English and Aaron Norton next year as well. If they leave to West Coast or Fremantle, then look out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. A very long video. Very tiring video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.